the NBA schedule explosion. The NBA may have just exposed how much power one superstar still holds over the entire league. Opening night should celebrate a new season. Christmas Day should showcase the best teams and biggest rivalries, but when the 2026-27 schedule took shape, one name seemed to sit in the middle of everything. LeBron James. Teams wanted answers. Networks wanted marquee games locked in. Yet the process appeared frozen while LeBron decided where he would play next. Once he chose Philadelphia, the dominoes fell fast, and suddenly, the Sixers were everywhere. Opening night sends LeBron and Jaylen Brown into Madison Square Garden on the exact night the defending champion Knicks are supposed to raise their banner and receive their rings. New York waited more than half a century for this moment. And instead of letting that celebration stand alone, the league placed one of basketball's biggest stars directly across the floor. That decision instantly created tension. Josh Hart's frustration captured what many Knicks fans were thinking. Why should a championship night become another chapter in the LeBron James story? From the league's perspective, the answer is obvious. Ratings, star power, and drama. Philadelphia walking into the Garden against the reigning champions is must-see television, but that is exactly where the controversy began. Christmas Day tells the same story. LeBron is set to return to Los Angeles in a Sixers jersey, facing the franchise he once led and potentially sharing the floor with his own son. Other rivalries may be huge, but once again, the biggest spotlight points toward James. So here is the question hanging over the season. Is the NBA simply giving fans the biggest possible show, or has the league once again built its most important nights around LeBron James? Before we go deeper, tell me where you're watching from. If you think the NBA still revolves around LeBron, come on. If you think this is just smart business, come on, dude, and subscribe to the channel. Because this story is only getting started, the league was waiting on one man. To understand why the schedule became so controversial, you have to understand what happened before a single matchup was announced. This was not a normal summer where the NBA simply looked at the strongest teams, picked the best rivalries, and locked the biggest television windows into place. According to the original story, the entire process was waiting on one decision where LeBron James would play next. Commissioner Adam Silver had teams looking for answers and broadcast partners trying to prepare their biggest dates. Opening week mattered. Christmas mattered even more. But there was one massive problem. Nobody knew which jersey LeBron would be wearing. Cleveland was mentioned. Miami was part of the conversation. Even the possibility of seeing LeBron alongside Stephen Curry in Golden State created headlines. Every destination came with a completely different television story. If he went back to Cleveland, the league had a homecoming. If he returned to Miami, history repeated itself. If he joined Curry, the NBA suddenly had one of the most unbelievable superstar pairings imaginable. That uncertainty mattered because LeBron was not simply another free agent. His destination had the power to change which teams received national exposure, which rivalries became premium television, and which arenas became the center of the basketball world. Then Philadelphia happened. The moment James chose the 76ers, the mystery disappeared, and the schedule suddenly had its centerpiece. Philadelphia already had Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. Then Jaylen Brown entered the picture. Add LeBron James, and a team that already carried major expectations instantly became appointment television. But this is where the uncomfortable question begins. If one player's decision can influence opening night, Christmas Day, network planning, and multiple franchises at once, how much power does one superstar actually have over the NBA machine? Because after LeBron made his choice, the league didn't just give Philadelphia a spotlight, it gave them two of the biggest stages on the calendar. Philadelphia changes everything. Once LeBron James chose Philadelphia, the entire story changed almost overnight. The Sixers were no longer simply another Eastern Conference contender trying to survive a brutal season. They suddenly carried one of the most fascinating collections of names in basketball: LeBron James, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Jaylen Brown, V, J, Edgecombe. Different generations, different personalities, different expectations, all pushed into the same championship conversation. And from a television perspective, that roster created something the NBA could not ignore. Opening night, put Philadelphia in Madison Square Garden. Christmas Day, send Philadelphia back to Los Angeles. Two massive dates, two emotional environments, and both centered around the newest Sixer. What makes the decision even more interesting is what the league apparently did not choose. Jaylen Brown had moved from Boston to Philadelphia, creating an obvious revenge storyline against the Celtics. That matchup practically wrote itself Brown returning to face the franchise he had previously represented would have carried tension before the ball even went up. Yet Boston was not Philadelphia's opening night opponent. Boston was not Philadelphia's Christmas opponent either. Instead, the league selected New York and Los Angeles, two locations where LeBron's presence created an even larger narrative. That tells you something about how NBA storytelling works. Rivalry can be powerful, revenge can be powerful, championship history can be powerful, but superstar mythology can overpower all of it. Philadelphia against New York turns a championship celebration into a collision between the reigning champions and the league's newest super team. Philadelphia against Los Angeles turns a regular season game into a homecoming filled with history, family, and unfinished emotion. And suddenly Jaylen Brown's own storyline becomes secondary inside his own team's biggest games. That is what made Philadelphia's transformation so important. LeBron did not merely join another roster. His decision changed how people looked at the Sixers, how networks could market them, and how the league positioned two of its biggest nights. The basketball questions are already enormous. Can all those stars share the floor? Can Embiid stay dominant with another powerful personality beside him? Can Maxey continue growing when so much attention shifts elsewhere? But before any of those questions can be answered, Philadelphia has to walk into Madison Square Garden, and waiting for them will be a team that believes opening night was supposed to belong to New York. The Knicks night was supposed to be their night. Imagine waiting more than 50 years for one celebration. The building is packed. Former players are expected back. Championship rings are ready. The banner is prepared to rise into the Madison Square Garden rafters. Every camera should be pointed toward the defending champions because for one night, the entire NBA world is supposed to acknowledge what New York accomplished. Then LeBron James walks through the tunnel wearing a Philadelphia 76ers jersey. That is the tension sitting at the center of opening night. The Knicks enter the season as defending champions after beating San Antonio in the 2026 NBA Finals. The celebration at Madison Square Garden should represent the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Players receive their rings. The banner goes up. The crowd gets to relive a championship moment that generations of Knicks fans waited to experience. But the opponent changes the atmosphere completely. Philadelphia isn't arriving quietly. LeBron is making his Sixers debut alongside Jaylen Brown. Cameras will be looking for every interaction. Every reaction during the ceremony suddenly becomes part of another storyline. Does LeBron watch the banner? Does he look impressed? Does the crowd boo him? Does Philadelphia spoil the celebration once the game begins? That is exactly why the matchup became controversial. From the NBA's perspective, it is almost perfect television. The defending champions against the newly assembled powerhouse at Madison Square Garden is the kind of event networks dream about. From the Knicks' perspective, the emotional equation is different. This is not just game 1 of 82. This is ring night. The championship belongs to the players who earned it, the organization that survived the season, and the fans who waited decades to see that banner. Putting LeBron in the building guarantees enormous attention, but it also guarantees that part of the conversation will have nothing to do with New York's title. And that frustration eventually found a voice. Josh Hart didn't just look at the schedule and see another difficult opponent. He saw a celebration that was supposed to stand alone, and a league that apparently couldn't resist adding one more superstar storyline to it. Josh Hart says what Knicks fans were thinking. Josh Hart's reaction matters because it exposed the difference between how the NBA sells a moment and how players experience it. From a television booth, Sixers versus Knicks is almost impossible to criticize. You have the defending champions, you have Madison Square Garden, you have LeBron James arriving with a new team, you have Jaylen Brown beside him, you have championship rings, a banner ceremony, and a game carrying immediate Eastern Conference implications. That is premium entertainment. But Hart was not looking at the matchup as a television producer. He was looking at it as someone who helped earn the banner. His frustration centered on the feeling that the league had waited for LeBron's decision and then used that decision to place him directly inside New York's championship celebration. In the original story, Hart described the situation as incredibly corny, capturing the irritation surrounding the matchup. And whether fans agree with him or not, the emotional logic is easy to understand. The Knicks did everything necessary to own this night. They survived a championship run. They defeated San Antonio. They brought a title back to New York after more than half a century, yet the conversation surrounding their opening night opponent immediately became about LeBron. That is the real conflict. The NBA operates as both a sports league and an entertainment business. It needs compelling basketball. but it also needs stories that make millions of people stop what they're doing and watch. LeBron walking into the Garden on banner night accomplishes exactly that. But great television can still frustrate the people living inside the story. And there was another scheduling possibility that made Hart's frustration even easier to understand. The league had other massive matchups available. There were playoff rematches. There were old teammates facing each other. There were revenge stories waiting to happen. Philadelphia itself had one sitting right in front of the NBA. Jaylen Brown had left Boston. If the league wanted drama without inserting LeBron into New York's championship celebration, there was an obvious alternative, yet the biggest date still went somewhere else. And that decision reveals exactly whose story the NBA believed would attract the largest audience, the revenge game that never got the spotlight. Jaylen Brown against Boston seemed almost too obvious. A major player leaves the Celtics, joins a loaded Philadelphia team, and suddenly has the chance to face his former franchise with LeBron James, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey beside him. For a league that thrives on emotion, history, grudges, and reunions, the matchup had everything. Yet it wasn't selected as Philadelphia's opening night centerpiece. It wasn't selected as Philadelphia's Christmas showcase either. Instead, the Sixers were sent to New York and Los Angeles. That choice is important because it shows how the NBA apparently ranked its available storylines. Jaylen Brown returning to face Boston would have been personal. LeBron entering Madison Square Garden during a championship ceremony was bigger. Jaylen Brown against his former teammates would have created natural tension. LeBron returning to Los Angeles on Christmas carried history that stretched across years. That does not mean Brown's story was unimportant. It means LeBron's story was more valuable to the calendar, and there is a massive difference between those two things. Every professional sports league makes these choices. There are limited national television windows and countless possible narratives. Someone gets the prime slot, someone gets pushed deeper into the schedule. But when the same superstar repeatedly appears in the most valuable windows, people start noticing the pattern. Opening night puts LeBron inside New York's championship celebration. Christmas sends him back to Los Angeles. And meanwhile, a ready-made Philadelphia-Boston revenge game remains outside those two dates. That's why the discussion goes beyond whether someone likes LeBron James. This is about leverage. For more than 2 decades, LeBron has been one of the safest television attractions in basketball. His presence brings history with it. Every arena creates another chapter. Every former team creates another emotional connection. And Philadelphia suddenly inherited all of that the moment he arrived. Jaylen Brown brought one revenge story. LeBron brought 20 years of them. But Christmas Day was about to take that reality to another level. Because Los Angeles wasn't simply another road game. It was the place LeBron had called home for 8 seasons. And the person waiting on the other side would make the reunion even more complicated. Christmas Day becomes LeBron's homecoming. Christmas Day has always been one of the NBA's biggest stages. 5 games, national television. Superstars from afternoon until night, rivalries, rematches, contenders, and generations of families watching basketball together. The 2026 slate was already loaded. San Antonio and New York offered a finals rematch. Oklahoma City and Minnesota brought back Western Conference playoff tension. Boston and Miami carried their own superstar storyline. Denver and Golden State put Nikola Jokic and Stephen Curry into the final window. Yet one matchup immediately swallowed more attention than almost everything around it. Philadelphia at Los Angeles. LeBron James returning to face the Lakers. For 8 seasons, Los Angeles had been his NBA home. He arrived in 2018, won a championship with the franchise, and became one of the defining figures of another era of Lakers basketball. Now he would return wearing another jersey. That visual alone changes the game. The crowd that once celebrated him now has to decide how to receive him. Some fans will remember the championship. Others will focus on the fact that he left. Every possession becomes layered with history. The Lakers are no longer built around LeBron either. Luka Doncic represents the next direction of the franchise. And the original story describes Los Angeles adding players such as Walker, Kessler, and Quentin Grimes around him. So Christmas becomes more than a reunion. It becomes old era versus new era. LeBron returns with Embiid, Maxey, Brown, and a Philadelphia team built to command national attention. Los Angeles answers with a roster trying to prove that the franchise can move forward without the superstar who defined its previous chapter. But there is one detail that makes this matchup unlike almost any normal homecoming. LeBron did not leave every member of his family behind in Los Angeles. Bronny James remained with the Lakers. And suddenly, Christmas Day wasn't only about LeBron versus his former franchise. It could become something far more personal. A father walking onto an NBA court against his own son, LeBron versus Bronny, changes the entire emotion. Of all the storylines surrounding this schedule, none feels stranger or more human than what could happen in Los Angeles on Christmas Day. LeBron James enters the arena as a Philadelphia 76 heir. Bronny James enters as a Los Angeles Laker, father and son. Suddenly standing on opposite sides of the same NBA matchup, think about how unusual that possibility is. Christmas is normally built around family. The original story even highlighted the almost surreal thought of LeBron and Bronny potentially spending Christmas Eve together before waking up the next day and preparing to compete against each other on national television. That is not the kind of storyline a marketing department can simply invent. The NBA can select the date, networks can promote the matchup, producers can build montages. But the emotional foundation exists because of what happened naturally. LeBron left Los Angeles while Bronny stayed, and that gives this game a layer that ratings alone cannot explain. For LeBron, Los Angeles represents history, a championship, 8 seasons, relationships, and one of the final major chapters of his career. For Bronny, Los Angeles represents his own attempt to create an NBA identity. If they share the floor on opposite sides, every camera in the building will understand the significance. A father spent years trying to reach the league long enough to play alongside his son. Now, the same basketball journey could put them against each other. That contrast is powerful because it reminds people that underneath contracts, television windows, trades, and free agency decisions are real families navigating unusual circumstances, and this is where the schedule debate becomes more complicated. Critics can argue that too much attention revolves around LeBron. They can point to New York's banner night. They can point to Jaylen Brown's overlooked Boston storyline. They can point to other Christmas matchups getting less attention. But when something like LeBron versus Bronny appears on the calendar, it becomes difficult for the NBA not to highlight it. The league didn't manufacture the family story. It simply recognized how valuable that story had become. And that leads directly to the biggest question of all. At what point does smart promotion become dependent? Does the NBA still orbit around LeBron? Step back from the individual games and the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. Opening night, LeBron, Madison Square Garden, LeBron, Philadelphia's transformation, LeBron, Christmas in Los Angeles, LeBron, Bronny, LeBron. Even debates about which matchups were not selected somehow circle back to LeBron. That does not mean the rest of the NBA lacks star power. Far from it. Victor Wembanyama and Jalen Brunson have a finals rematch. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Anthony Edwards headline another major battle. Stephen Curry and Nikola Jokic close the Christmas slate. Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jason Tatum carry another marquee matchup. The league is overflowing with talent, yet LeBron still appears to create a different level of gravitational pull. That is the extraordinary part of the story. He is no longer a young superstar being introduced to the world. He is the veteran whose career has already crossed multiple eras of basketball. And according to the source story, at 41 years old, his free agency decision still had enough weight to affect the league's biggest scheduling conversations. That can be interpreted two completely different ways. One side sees a problem. If the NBA constantly builds its largest television moments around one veteran superstar, does it risk overshadowing the next generation? Should Wembanyama, Brunson, Edwards, Shai, Maxey, and other younger stars receive more of the oxygen? The other side sees something much simpler. LeBron still creates attention as long as millions of people care where he plays, who he faces, which city he returns to, and what happens with his son. The league would be foolish to pretend other. Professional basketball is competition, but the NBA also sells stories, and few players in league history have carried as many interconnected stories as LeBron James. Cleveland, Miami, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, championships, former teammates, old rivals, his son. Every destination creates another branch of the same enormous basketball story. So maybe the real controversy isn't that the league continues to revolve around LeBron. Maybe it's that after all these years, nobody else has completely taken the spotlight away from him, and that reveals something much bigger about where the NBA is right now. What this really says about the NBA, the most important lesson from this schedule isn't simply that LeBron James remains famous. Everybody already knew that. The deeper lesson is how the NBA balances competition, business, history, and human emotion when all four collide, New York earned the right to celebrate its championship. Josh Hart's frustration makes sense because players do not experience Banner Night as a television product. They experience it as the reward for months of sacrifice, pressure, travel, injuries, and playoff battles. At the same time, the league has a responsibility to build matchups people want to watch. Putting Philadelphia in Madison Square Garden creates enormous interest. Sending LeBron back to Los Angeles on Christmas creates another event. If Bronny shares the floor with him, the emotional stakes become even larger. Neither side has to be completely wrong. That is what makes the controversy interesting. The Knicks can deserve their own spotlight while the NBA can still recognize the commercial power of LeBron. Jaylen Brown's Boston storyline can deserve attention while a Lakers homecoming remains the larger national draw. Younger stars can deserve more promotion while LeBron's history still makes him impossible to ignore. Strategically, the NBA's challenge is what comes next. LeBron cannot occupy this role forever. Eventually, the league will need its next generation to create the same emotional investment, not just incredible highlights, but rivalries, history, loyalty, heartbreak, redemption, and stories fans follow for years. And maybe that is the biggest lesson for everyone involved. Basketball becomes more meaningful when competition does not erase respect. Players can dislike scheduling decisions without turning the disagreement personal. Fans can support different teams without treating every debate like a war. And the league can chase ratings without forgetting that the moments creating those ratings belong to real people. When opening night arrives, New York's banner will still rise. When Christmas arrives, LeBron will still have to play the game. And eventually, all the controversy will give way to the only thing that can truly settle the conversation: basketball. Now, I want your verdict. If you believe the NBA is making the right move by putting its biggest spotlight around LeBron, while it still can, come on. If you believe the league needs to start pushing the next generation harder, come on, do. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, share it with another NBA fan, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications because the season hasn't even started and the drama is already here.